Hi, this is about the arrogance of many people in the so-called atheist community, or many people online who talk about atheism in general. And I'm not talking about atheism itself per se. I'm talking about the attitudes that many of these people have towards trying to understand the world in general, and how they simply take the dogma of religion and replace it with the dogma of whatever they are told is mainstream science, without knowing anything for themselves whatsoever. And yesterday, the Amazing Atheist posted this video attacking Jim Carrey because several years ago Jim Carrey made some remarks about associations between autism and vaccinations. And the rebuttal is that Jim Carrey is an idiot because no one in mainstream medicine believes that there's an association. But of course, if you have any knowledge in natural health, if you're a professional in natural health, integrative health, whatever you want to call it, functional medicine, if you've been trained in dealing with these complex problems, if you've been to the seminars, if you see what top level natural healthcare practitioners are doing, it's all about detoxification when it comes to autism. It's about a very toxic world coming in and disrupting neurological function. And that we have a select people who are not very efficient at removing these toxins. Is anyone claiming that vaccinations are the cause of autism? No, no one is making that claim, because really, when you start getting into the complexities of chronic disease, where you have to start thinking in a holistic manner, or at the very least a systems manner. You don't think in a reductionistic manner of this is the cause of that. So is vaccinations the cause of autism? No, but there is a general consensus within professionals in natural health that vaccinations are part of the piece, and that metals and that sort of toxicity is definitely part of the piece. And I don't treat children with autism, but I definitely been to the lectures and have been taught by other people to do this. And detoxification, metals, those sort of things, that's a really big part of this. Autism is also a pretty new disease. It's also something that has been increasing at a very, very high rate. No one is disputing this. There's no one in conventional medicine or natural health. No one is disputing these things. Yeah, so made a short little reply, um, basically saying, that there can be a connection, whatever. And all these people in anger started replying to me, like, about how stupid I am, and then it was one person after the other was writing about how dare I say autism is a new disease. It's always been around. It just wasn't diagnosed. And they're just saying nonsense. So we have these people who don't know what they're talking about. They have no professional training, but besides professional training, they don't have any training whatsoever in an area. They know literally nothing, and they're claiming to be scientific, but instead of attempting to follow any attempt at scientific reasoning, they are doing what's called rationalization. That means that you just try to figure out the world not by looking at empirical data, but by coming up with logical arguments. You cannot do that. You need some information. And of course, if you know anything about autism, the signs of autism are very, very specific. So this if you have these signs, you're not going to mistake autism for something else. If this was going around with this high frequency 100 years ago or 200 years ago, it definitely would have been known. If we now have a situation where 1 in 80 boys is displaying these very unusual symptoms, but that's fitting into, there are symptoms of autism that are autism. It's not like, oh, this person is mentally retarded or whatnot. So clearly this is very new, and all these people, they're just using this type of rationalization, anti-scientific mode of thought, claiming that it's always been around, people just didn't realize it. But besides that, part of what they're saying, and part of the Amazing Atheist argument, was that nothing is really true in health unless it is agreed upon by mainstream medicine. That's the underlining idea here. And what we really have is a population, many of them call themselves atheists, where there is a value system which says, I value science, I value the scientific method. Now, that's fine. But then, like most other people, they take their value system and then they decide what is true or not based upon actual evidence, or they just decide whether or not something is true or not if it is matching up with their value system. So if someone hears on the news, mainstream medicine does not believe there's any connection between vaccinations and autism, because these people are being told that official world of science is saying this, then therefore it must be true because it's in line with their value system. But now, even though their value system is one of being scientific, they're just basically believing whatever they are told is scientific without actually knowing anything. Another example of this is dark matter. Many people believe dark matter is real because some show on science told them that it is real. In fact, dark matter is a theory. There is no evidence for it whatsoever. It is not proven, and there is actually debate over whether or not dark matter even exists, because there's no physical evidence for it whatsoever, and it's more of an invention that corrects equations rather than you know something that's been discovered. So maybe the equations are wrong. So that's an actual debate. But nonetheless, people will not be aware of that. But then they'll say, I believe in dark matter because they are told that's scientific. And you can see this example after example where people will be up in arms about how we have to follow something that is scientific, but the requisite for this is that the mainstream media has to tell them that this has been established as scientific. Unfortunately, the real world is a lot more complicated than what have you been told is scientific. Other example, natural health is probably the biggest field that takes hits from this because we're not in line with mainstream medicine. We can take something as simple as the germ theory of disease, and it seems like it's pretty well established, but there are many instances where the germ is only going to be able to live if it has a host that will allow it to live. And when someone has a sore throat and you take antibiotics to try to get rid of it, you're suppressing the body's detox response, and then you're sending that disease deeper into the body. But if you start trying to explain this to some of these people, they'll decry you for being anti-scientific, when in fact there are deeper truths that they are not aware of. But instead of being truly scientific and humble at the fact that no one has a monopoly on the truth, and that really all we have are perspectives that reveal the truth to varying degrees, but learning the truth is an emergent process. Therefore, there are holes in all of there are holes in everyone's knowledge. Instead of really being humble to that fact, we have people who, in arrogance, will decry anyone who disagrees with what has been mainstream science. And there doesn't seem to be any awareness in these people's minds that what truly is scientific, what truly is following the scientific method, may not be what the news or what some show on the Discovery Channel is telling you is scientific. Maybe the scientists are wrong. Maybe there are disagreements within science and you're only hearing one part of the side. Maybe there are financial interests motivating one person to say one thing, such as especially in healthcare. Maybe people become stuck with their paradigms and they don't want to change, and that can be with so-called scientists also. So we have this really lack of being humble and this arrogance. And this really doesn't come so much from scientists. It comes from loudmouths on the internet who just want to bash other people for not being scientific. But they're just really displaying their ignorance. And you can't even discuss anything with these people because they have no ability to effectively communicate with anyone. If you disagree, they just yell at you that you're stupid. They come up with idiotic rational arguments. It's all nonsense. and they basically then decry, if you even want to attempt to have a discussion on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, that you must then like write a 100-page book in a little YouTube post to totally explain anything. You can't even like post a link and say, "Oh, go check this out." Because I used to get into arguments with people, and I would put a link. Hey, if you look over here, you'll see some information that might be showing you another way of looking at something. And they'll be like, "You have to send them, put in these links, blah blah blah. You're an idiot." So there's no real point of even discussing anything with this. And also, many times this becomes wrapped up with atheism, even though this really should have nothing to do with atheism. It's kind of the mindset of many people who call themselves atheists. And what I really see is elevation of a reductionistic way of thinking, which is not fully scientific because that's not really a systems theory way of thinking. It's not a holistic way of thinking. It's they're taking a very reductionistic, narrow-minded way of thinking and then believing whatever they are told by the mainstream is scientific. This is basically elevating certain elements on the TV news and the Discovery Channel into the position of the new church, which it's totally anti-scientific. And you'll have people like Richard Dawkins has made a lot of money just repeating nonsense to these people, often going after the lowest common denominator, but in no way do they is there interest in questioning your own paradigms. And also, they only seem to try to rally against something for being unscientific if it's the so-called like low-hanging fruit. So if there's some like crazy Christian on YouTube, that person will get attacked. But if it's something like having a monetary system, a monetary market economy that has no reference to empirical reality or objective human needs, then, well, you're not going to have these people saying we need to apply the scientific method to resource allocation. And they're not going to say, is it really scientific to send children to school to be abused socially? Is it really, they're not going to say these things. They're not going to say, is it scientific to have a healthcare system that's one way or another based upon something called money? They're not going to say, is it scientific to run your entire economy for something called money, which doesn't even exist in the physical world? They're not going to say, is it scientific to claim that we have all these legal natural rights when, again, there is no reference to physical reality. So there's whole realms where we as a society do not follow the scientific method, but the Richard Dawkins types and their repeaters are only interested in claiming that really people in either religion or natural health are not scientific, but they're not going after the major issues, which are economic, which is the legal system, which is the way that our entire society is structured with no thought whatsoever to objective human needs. So these people, they can be, hardcore libertarian capitalists at the same time. They're denouncing the religious person for believing in, whatever their religious stuff, but at the same time, they not only have the religion of believing that whatever Discovery Channel tells them is scientific, but then they have the religion of capitalism, the religion that we're all somehow autonomous, non-connected beings, and makes sense for us to compete against each other for survival without any reference to empirical reality. And there are other ways that these people are completely not scientific. But where does the arrogance come to say that because you do not believe that some woman 2,000 years ago was impregnated by God or something, like, okay, you realize that that's nonsense. All of a sudden, that realization means that you can put on the Discovery Channel and decry that anyone who disagrees with Discovery Channel is an idiot, while you're going around without questioning without really questioning any of your paradigms. So this sort of sciences, this sort of elevating Discovery Channel to the new Church of Science, it's an ego trip. It's just about as much an ego trip as certain religious people believe that they are in direct communication with God. People really should be more humble than this. Okay, that's it. Bye.